Welcome to the voice of St. Anthony Parish from Allston, Massachusetts, right here on WROL 950 AM 100.3 FM. And you can also hear us at CatholicAudiomedia.com. That's CatholicAudiomedia.com. We're going to continue our conversation with Bruce Boccardi, and we're actually going to be finishing this off Tuesday and Wednesday of next week. So there's a little bit more coming after today. But he's been fascinating. And one of the things that I was fascinated to see this, because a lot of people, for some people, when they hear unions, they go, oh, and others go, oh, that's wonderful. And others go, no, that's trouble. Turns out in the Soviet Union, in totalitarian societies, unions are not allowed. Wow. So that's kind of interesting to say, for anyone saying about communism, if you believe in communism, you don't believe in unions. Isn't that something? Well, anyway, we're going to switch over to the conversation right now. And this is something we've talked about before, and there's so much to it. You know, in our current political process, there is so much focused on just a few things. And if you watch either Fox or CNN or ABC or CBS or whatever, the biggest thing you're going to find out is which side stands when it comes to President Trump and whoever is in President Biden, former President Trump and President Biden. Meanwhile, all these issues that touch on every single American in this country are never in the media, or not enough that you can see us. And you just brought another example. Here there is these important things, and no one knows about these things. Am I right about that?
Yes, and it's not an accident. I mean, this has been the history of. Although I think it's become worse now because we've had a consolidation, if you will, of major media corporations, and and those are owned by the oligarchs, and their point of view is definitely not going to be in the interests of working people. I mean, this is what their profits are all about, and I think there's 1,500 radio stations in the United States that are considered conservative or reactionary, if you will, more of an extreme word. But, I don't even know if you can, other than Tom Hartman from the Midwest, I think he's in Oregon, but he has a national program. But other than his, I don't know of any other radio station. I'm sure there's some out there here and there local, but very few. So the point of view that's coming across, and Fox so-called news, they, exemplified this and they're, because they've run into obvious problems and being sued for, lying and everything else. But they've so many years they've had they've been in front of in the microphone, and that microphone has been loud and shrill, and it has definitely promoting the view of our economic model, the worst excesses of it, and people get, there's a word for it, I just found out about. It's called menticide, and it means brainwashed. Yeah. And I think
the Latin term, it would be actually mind killing.
Yeah, you're right, exactly. So, that's a way to kind of, it sort of brought it home to me that, hey, I sometimes will write and have some things published, and I say, gee, do I want to repeat that? Well, you have to kind of repeat things, and I think that the people in the corporate media understand this, and oftentimes, you're getting it over and over again, and the thing that sort of, like you say, what are current issues? I mean, if you really look at the economy, you can't separate, in my mind, the economy and the labor union movement. You just can't. And the context, like, I've mentioned this before, but there's a nonprofit called the Ludwig Institute of Shared Prosperity, LISEP. And, they've came out with a report that the percentage of U.S. labor force, that is, they call it functionally unemployed. In other words, they don't have a full-time job. Right. But they want one. They have no job, or they don't earn a living wage conservatively pegged at $20,000. Now, that's 22.9% was the figure they came up with on their unemployment figure in July this year. The BLS, in the meanwhile, their figure was 3.4% unemployment. So there's a little bit of a problem there with diverging. And the Shadow Government Statistics is another nonprofit that does a lot of economic work, and their July 2023 unemployment number was 24.9%. And the main thing about the main number that they use, which the BLS doesn't use, is the BLS, and I mentioned this before, is that they, in 1994, they eliminated, defined out of existence, whatever you want to call it, the number of workers who stopped looking for a job after 1 year,
Right.
and that really changed, the number. Now there's one other nonprofit which I found fascinating. It's called ALICE, and that's the Asset Limited Income Constrained Employed Demographic, and they're an organization that works to secure economic, racial justice for low income Americans. And in April of this year, they concluded, and like I say, most of the data, almost everybody they get it from the BLS, but how they frame it and how it's presented is important because it has to be accessible. People have to be able to understand and grasp a lot of the numbers, and that's partly what I think is failing oftentimes of progressive people, is not getting the argument out there that can be really explained and used almost like a bumper sticker or a slogan. But you have to get a report out there that people can grasp. And Alice concluded that 29% of the Alice households, which in the United States was 126,903,920, that's the exact number of households, and 29% earned above the poverty level, but not enough to afford the basics in the communities that they live. They do mostly regional communities and states. Now, in my just looking at it to me, common sense is that 41% here were below the Alice threshold of poverty. That means it's reasonable to conclude that a significant number of households are living just above the poverty line. So, we're not talking about, 2 or 3% of, people that are not doing well. There's a lot of people that are not doing well out there. And as I say, I think that's something that unions will address. And in fact, this morning, I just noticed this. A report just came out yesterday, the Treasury Department, the United States Treasury Department, and they stated that they argue that their case is that, if you will, that labor unions are critical to combating income inequality, which has risen dramatically in recent decades as union membership has declined and real wages have stagnated. I'll unquote that one. So, that was encouraging to see that report, but there's been a lot of others that have been saying this for quite a few years. It's just that it's come to the point, I think now in our economy that, and you look at the numbers, it's really troubling. There are more, to me, there's an economic tree, and that tree, it starts off with the economy, and the branches from that break out, and you've got not just wages and salaries, which are, pitifully low, but it branches out into health insurance. I mean, you've got 30 million Americans that don't have health insurance.
Yeah.
And there's like 43% of Americans have inadequate health insurance. At $1,000 would bankrupt them. There's some studies that come out on that. That's 73% without health care. The United States is supposedly the wealthiest country in the world. We can't afford health care. It's because the healthcare corporations, I mean, they're breaking in huge profits, and that's one of the branches of the tree. We're the most unequal country in all the developed nations. The other thing I wanted to mention was that this is, to me, is definitely a union issue, because public sector school systems, unions, are being attacked viciously because these oligarchs, they want to privatize everything, and 1 in 5 Americans are illiterate. I mean, that's appalling. And 21%, but by the 4th grade, 35% are illiterate. I mean, how do you reconcile that? And just to go back to the healthcare, you've got, we spend twice as much on healthcare than any other developed countries, and yet our life expectancy is 78. Australia is 82, France 83, Canada 82, Japan 84. So, there are a lot of issues: education, healthcare, housing, and all of those issues, to me, they spread out from the economic branch. And unions have been able, and they're still trying as they can, but to fight these and to protect the interests of working folks who, as Lincoln said, they create the profit. Workers, employees, they create the profits. And they're not, the way the economic model is set up, they do not share in those. And that's, to me, is a fundamental problem, which has to be addressed.
We're going to talk more with Bruce next Tuesday. You know, he always has so much to say, and it's hard to put it all in just 1 week, but we're going to talk to him again starting next Tuesday for a couple days. In the meantime, have a blessed weekend. You can now leave a message for us, which we can air and discuss on this program. Just call 617-297-7452. That's 617-297-7452. 617-297-7452. Feel free to call, leave a comment, a question, or even feedback, and we may play it on the air. I can discuss your comment or question as well, so give that a try. 617-297-7452, 617-297-7452. I want to call your attention to Catholic TV, which offers great faith-filled, family-friendly programming 24 hours a day. You can find your cable channel at www.getcatholictv.com, and you can watch online on the free apps or check out the YouTube channel. Daily Mass, Rosaries, the Divine Mercy Chaplet, and the Our Lady of Perpetual Help Novena are all available online and on demand. Check out CatholicTV.com. If you would like to support our program, please consider a donation to St. Anthony Parish in Allston, Massachusetts. There are several ways to consider this. One is to purchase any of our merchandise, which you can find at the shopping tab at CatholicAudiomedia.com. That's CatholicAudiomedia.com. There are coffee mugs there. There's also my latest book, Encounter Christ in Your Humanity, all of which you can find at the shopping tab at CatholicAudiomedia.com. You can also donate to the show directly through either the Donate tab, also at CatholicAudiomedia.com, or by sending a donation through the U.S. Postal Service with your questions and comments at 43 Holton Street, Allston, Massachusetts, 02134. That's St. Anthony Parish, 43 Holton Street, Allston, Massachusetts, 02134. Finally, the best way you can support our parish is to attend Mass on Sundays at 10 o'clock and be a part of our parish. We thank you for any support you would like to give to St. Anthony Parish in Allston, Massachusetts, the sponsoring parish for this media outreach to Catholics and other Christians in the WROL, WEZE, and podcast listening audience. In Cristo vivimos.